You're listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast.
You're listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast. My name is Shawn Wilkie, and along with my somewhat awesome co-host, we interview the innovators in this space every week. But just before we get started this week, we want to shout out to our friends over at the Vet Show at Home group. They're going to be hosting an online digital trade show starting March 25th, ending March 27th, and it's a great opportunity to get your CE for the year. It's absolutely free, so check it out. And with that, Ivan, over to you.
Hi, I'm Ivan Zach, and I'm happy to introduce Steve Thomas. We're going to talk today about entrepreneurship and consolidation. Steve is a managing partner and CEO of Vets Pets. He holds a degree in management and business administration in finance from West Forest University School of Business, and also BBA in management from the Terry College of Business and the University of Georgia. A couple of fun facts. Prior to starting Vets Pets, Steve worked at finance, serves as a board of director of the Family YMCA in Wilson, North Carolina. And the day before this is being recorded, Steve broke ground in a new emergency and critical care facility in Fayetteville, North Carolina. Steve, welcome to the show.
Welcome, gentlemen. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
So I have a question. So I work a lot with consolidators, and I call them consolidators because they consolidate different businesses. And everybody has a different flavor, and sometimes people get offended and they say, no, we're Denovo. No, we're franchise. No, we're brand building. So who are you, and what do you guys do, and what does Vets Pets do different than others?
Sure. Well, we'll give you a mouthful. I think we refer to ourselves, or the term I like, is a cooperative network of veterinary hospitals. I guess I'd say we're different in that we kind of do all the above. So we've purchased hospitals, we've done de novos, we like to expand hospitals into new service areas. And we are fairly geographically concentrated. So we operate about 22 hospitals, but all of them are within what we like to say, less than a day's car ride away. So we're pretty hands-on in our management. We try to build our practices around people. So a lot of times we will look to partner with the next generation of veterinarian if we purchase or start a practice and aren't really looking to continue on the practice with the seller so much, more looking to transition it to the next generation of veterinarian.
So with that, let's put it this way. If I'm a veterinarian and I'm in your car day reach and destination, I have everybody. I have NVA, I have VCA, I have, all of them are reaching out to me. If I'm a vet, what does attract me to go with you, join you, and develop further my practice? Is it what's the partnership look like? Is it 100% acquisition? Is it a partial acquisition? What does that look like?
Well, we're really focused more on, if you're a veterinarian, probably the veterinarians we're looking to talk to are typically first generation owners. So they're not current owners, but they desire to be owners. And they'd like to have a management team, experienced management team to partner with. So that's mostly what we're doing. So some practices that we buy, typically if we buy a practice, the seller is not interested to continue working for very long. And we have another veterinarian we're partnering with that will then continue to work with us in a partnership going forward. So I guess if you're a veterinarian and you're thinking, wow, I'm interested in practice ownership, I'm interested in being a leader, but I'd like to have a partner that focuses on the management side and the finance side to do that with, that would be a good person to talk to.
That sounds great, Steve. So give us the backstory. How did this whole thing start, and how did you end up in this role?
Well, gosh, we've been doing this 14 years now. So it's been a long time. It's hard to believe it's been that long. As you mentioned, I had a background in finance, enjoyed it. But as I further along in my career, started to kind of catch the entrepreneurial bug. So I was trying to find an industry and a business to get involved with. My father-in-law is a veterinarian. As I like to say, he's a veterinarian by trade, and I'm sure he was a very good one. He never practiced since we've worked together, but he was more of a business guy at heart. So as we got to know each other better, he started describing to me trends in the industry. I started to follow the industry when I was working in finance and became very intrigued with it and thought it could be a good business opportunity. So he said, well, if you're ever interested in doing something, let me know. So we put together a business plan, and we thought we'd be like an NVA or a VCA and tried to somewhat be that, but found as time went on that probably wasn't the best fit for our style. in how we wanted to grow and progress. So we kind of evolved into what we are today, which, yes, we grow quite a bit slower, I would say, than the other consolidators. We started with 2 and we're at about 22 now, 14 years later. We don't really measure ourselves on number of sites or locations. I mean, we try to build a big business, nor do we manage ourselves for an exit. We're privately owned and we hope to stay that way. We like to have control and be flexible. So long-winded answer to, started and now as you pivot, as things happen, and we've just kind of found ourselves with very happy the way we do things.
Great, Steve. So what's the future look like? Where are you guys going next?
More of the same, really. We've been somewhat in the same concentrated market. We've been doing Denovos and acquisitions, hope to continue to do that, probably at a little bit of a faster rate. We really try to measure our growth rate more as a percent of growth. So we've grown 25% a year consistently for 14 years. Like to continue to do that. As you mentioned, we broke ground on a new emergency hospital in Fayetteville. That's an existing hospital, but a new facility. So we do a lot of that. As facilities get dated and need to be updated, we build new ones, we renovate them. We add new services to them, whether that could be, for this instance, an emergency hospital that's currently after hours only and weekends. Try to convert it to 24 hours to serve that community, which currently does not have a 24-hour hospital. Potentially try to add specialty services to it if the community finds the need for it and we find practitioners that we align with that are interested in doing something like that. So I like the title of your podcast because we've been accused of having a lack of focus in the past. I'd like to say that we're opportunistic, but now I'm just going to say that we're innovative.
Well said. So a little bit back to what you said about management. That's, we hear from most consolidators, that's sort of the agreement between the veterinarians and the business that acquires them or builds new hospital. They're saying, we're going to do the business part. And that's something that I like to refer as the sort of value creation plan, right? This is what we as an organization promise our investors to deliver the value doing 1, 2, 3. And then for the most part, veterinarians are good at doing veterinary stuff. And that's, everybody recognizes that. But what are those kind of things if I'm a veterinarian trying to join the organization like yours? Is it inventory control? Is it marketing? Is it finance? What are those core competencies that you bring to the table that veterinarians can download to you and then basically focus on veterinary work?
Well, we do all those, what they, say back office type functions. I think we do them as well as most others. Where we focus the most is really on human resources, leadership development, and really kind of hands-on management and coaching at the practice level. So we have a pretty heavy HR field operations group, and because we're close, we can bring teams together for training, for leadership, for collaboration. We're also able to reach them physically in a short period of time. So I would say it's communication and more of the soft things that we probably excel in and focus on. And that it's a little harder to define, a little harder to silver bullet, but everybody who's been in this profession for a while knows the drama that can happen, the stress, working through difficult situations and conflict are extremely difficult. And that's where I think we really add the most value.
Steve, in the 20 years that almost 20 years that you've been doing this now, what have been the things from an innovation or change management perspective that you guys have been able to implement across the organization that have really moved the needle?
I would say it's been different. We don't have a playbook. We don't, I guess, apply the same playbook to every location. We really try to build value around a core veterinarian at locations. So some examples are, we've started high volume, high quality spay neuter clinics part-time at 3 locations. Community needed it. There was a passion by the veterinarian to do that, or we found some that were passionate about it. It was a real nice win-win to be able to fulfill a large facility maybe that had extra time, and then also a good feeling for a team to do something different. So that's one example. We've converted a general practice to 24 hours. We've converted a 24-hour emergency hospital to 24 hours and add specialists. We've added, lots of different services that veterinarians might have interest in, like advancing dentistry to include dental radiography or ultrasound or therapy laser or acupuncture. So we don't necessarily, if we see something successful at one practice, that doesn't necessarily mean it's right for every practice. We've done 5 or 10 different things that are successful. Depending on what the lead veterinarian wants to do, we'll try to build a business case around what they're passionate about.
So I'll throw a curveball.
All right.
With that, it sounds like you have an environment of innovation. Like you allow people to follow their interest and passion, which is, I think it's phenomenal. For veterinarians, it's very important, especially when you reach certain experience and, in your career, a lot of the times people hit sort of the ceiling of it and get bored like I did. That's why I don't practice anymore. But I think that also as a consolidation goes, the more consolidators I see, the harder it is to become scalable. If you don't have sort of a set, toolbox, if you will, of how we grow our certain metrics. And I don't know what those are, what you measure your 20 to 25% rate of growth. It could be revenue, it could be EBIT, a number of things. If you can share that, which one, that would be interesting. But to be consistent in that growth and then up your game every year on that, there needs to be some consistency for scalability. So how do you balance the challenge between being innovative, but at the same time scalable as you grow?
Well, the figure we target is revenue as far as compound annual growth. And I'll be honest, a little bit of the scalability is winging it. We don't have a set plan that, hey, we're going to do 5 acquisitions this year and 10 next year and 15 the next year. What we do have is a 3-year plan, and we feel pretty confident what different components of that 3-year plan will lead us to that growth the next 3 years. Another factor is we don't have at this time outside investors. So if we get down the road and we feel like this growth plan is compromising the way we like to do business or the way we like to operate, we'll stop. So that is somewhat nice to have that flexibility that we're not pressured to grow for the sake of growth. Now, we've been able to find it and pivot over the course of 14 years, ways to grow at that rate. So I guess we're just confident that if we've done it in the past, if we're willing to be creative and innovate, we continue to find ways to grow depending on what the market community wants and needs and what our veterinarians are passionate about.
Interesting. And so I guess that's a big difference, because a lot of consolidators that are funded by private equity, they have that, sort of 3 to 5 year window to kind of flip the organization and then squeeze as much EBITDA as you can from it. And even the fact that you're measuring your revenue as the measure of success, that shows that's excellent. And so that makes you very distinctly different for the veterinarians as a choice of organization to join. But I have another question on the balance between the Denovo and the acquisitions. We recently interviewed, actually.
Hey, wait a minute. I got to stop you. What the hell does Denovo mean? I don't even understand.
Okay, new clinics. So when you build the new clinics, that's a Denovo. I think it's a fancy word to say we build a new clinic.
Good. I'm sure a bunch of our listeners didn't know either. So go ahead, as you were, Ivan.
So when you're building new hospitals, so we interviewed another CEO of the franchise type of model, and they always build a new one, and then they become the owner. The new veterinarians become the owners, and there's a lot of business systems in place, and it is incredibly financially more beneficial, from what I found, is to build a new hospital than acquire a hospital, and especially because you can insert the culture that you want. You hire the people towards the culture, the core values, and the things that you want in your organization, as opposed to acquiring a culture and trying to integrate that, because that's where the things break. According to McKinsey, I think last time I checked, it's like 70% of acquisitions fail because of lack of integration ability. So do you find that is the easier path in your guys pivoting more towards Denovo, or is it sort of a mixture still?
It's still a mixture, but I would say that you're very accurate. The pro to a de novo or startup is, you start, there's no legacy culture, right? You start fresh and you mold it how you want. The challenge is, we have a small sample size of the number we've done. We've done 4 or 5. They're all doing fine, but they ramped at very different rates. So there's a little bit of ramp up risk to, okay, how quickly is this going to grow? And am I choosing the right market location and the right penetration to get that right? So that's probably the major offset to a startup, whereas it's the opposite with an acquisition. You've got an existing client base, you have an existing revenue base, but the culture, certainly, then that's been a challenge every time. Sometimes you get lucky, and you buy one and the culture just naturally fits. Sometimes it doesn't at all, and it's really hard to assess that up front. Especially when you get excited and you want to do something, you want to add a location, you got involved in the deal, you want to get it done. So we take a lot of time in that. And I guess that's also where we've learned who we are. We're going to change things. We're not going to, we're not going to come in and tell you that, hey, if we buy your practice, we're just going to let you keep doing things the way they're doing it. Because if you're not practicing up to our standards or providing service to our standards, we're going to change it. And we don't always know what those things are until we get in there. So that's typically what we'll say is, hey, look, there's going to be change. We don't know. We don't have a map or a stamp. We're going to come in and definitely do this, that, or the other. But there's always change. And we try to do it openly and collaboratively. But typically that change revolves around the new leader veterinarian and what they want to accomplish.
That's awesome. So I have a completely different question. I want to change directions entirely, make it a little bit more fun. So you've acquired a bunch of hospitals, you've started a bunch of new hospitals, you work with a ton of people, a couple hundred people, I'm guessing at least. What's the weirdest, zaniest, strangest thing that you've seen in the 14 years in being in this business?
Sure you want to go there?
Ooh, I have to maybe request anonymity first.
That's all this podcast is about. Only about
just for the three of us. It's not for anybody else.
That's one of the very, very enjoyable part of the job can be not so much what I've seen, but probably more of what I've heard from other folks going and visiting veterinarians. Probably the most interesting story I heard was we were out in a rural area and meeting with a couple of veterinarians that were formerly mixed practice veterinarians. They're going out making house calls, and they went to service some hogs, and the pen that the hogs were contained in were a bunch of old washers and dryers, just in like a square, and that's where they they used to fence in the pigs.
That's how it was built?
That was a fence.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's awesome. That's not so bad. Last time we heard about the house calls, it was they visited a porn star. That was that was the episode.
And it was the one with the dog mounted to the skateboard.
Oh yeah. They took Cedar my.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But
I want to turn back to a little bit of a sort of my topic of interest in the recent sort of, I guess, year or years, having been a veterinarian and burned out sort of severely through the experience, and then I wrote this dissertation about burnout and management styles in veterinary domain. I have this feeling that when practices are going through acquisition, they're hitting these classic triggers of burnout. And they're well known since the late 70s, and they were identified by Maslach. She was the first one who researched them. And I feel like all 6 of them are hit on during the acquisition, and working against those may really help the cultural fit and just understanding those. So I'll read those out to you, and just give me your thoughts on like which one of those you see that are potentially that you see what that happen, and then if there's anything that you guys do against that may help veterinarians to go through transition. So one is losing control, and so lack of control when this event happens. That's a classic, and it's not about the acquisitions classically. It's just lack of control at work may lead to burnout. Then value conflict, you kind of alluded to that. So the values, it's not necessarily they're good or bad, they don't match. So the value conflict between the two may lead to burnout. Insufficient reward, or when people are just taken for granted, when they stay too late after work and, writing records and not compensated for that. That's what I experienced. Work overload, that's the most classic one that people, when they think on burnout, they think, oh, wait, they just work a lot, but it's one of them. Unfairness, when there's a favoritism inside of the organization, and breakdown of the community, when there's no feedback loops from sort of the frontline staff to management, and when there's no conflict resolution mechanism, which may be something that you work on in the leadership. So what do you think about those? And is there anything that you kind of see, or maybe something that you feel like you guys actually alleviate?
Well, of the 6, I would say, and I don't know, have the nomenclature exactly right. I think the third one you alluded to is related to appreciation and the feeling of compensation fairly. That one, certainly we try to compensate fairly, but that's not always what it is. I think people understanding that they're valued and appreciated, we try pretty hard to do that. And a couple of examples, during this pandemic, we are doing curbside service. That's brought out a lot of indirect challenges towards people that you don't think about, right? So winter hits, colder in the winter, right? Not in the summer, not shorts, but scrubs, not concerned about the cold. So it's cold. So we decided that, we do provide uniform allowance as a general benefit, but we bought everybody jackets and a beanie hat to say thank you. And also, hey, look, we recognize this is tough. This is harder than it would have been otherwise, and this is something that we can do little things to help you here. Another one in the summer, similarly, we bought Yeti cups and gave gift certificates out to everybody. And we went and hand delivered them and said thank you. We split them up amongst our leadership team, and went and showed appreciation. Just describes them. Hey, no, we know you're out here working hard. Here's a little something that hopefully you can recognize and appreciate that we're thinking about you and trying to do the best we can. We had lunch and learns with some compassion fatigue type presenters. Where we bought everybody lunch, and then we would have them listen to this together on Teams over a Zoom. So I don't know how effective. I hope they're somewhat effective. We've certainly recognized, especially during COVID, it's been extremely difficult. So we think a lot about those things as a leadership team, and how can we help to make sure they feel supported and are supported.
That's really interesting. The thing that I kind of tweaked on there was, you bought them Yeti camps, but you hand delivered them. And I think oftentimes we screw that up as business owners. Like, it's one thing to buy somebody a jacket that's worth a couple $100, but it's a hell of another thing to buy them a jacket and take it to them and say, this is a token of my appreciation. Really appreciate you being on the team, and you pushing a little extra harder. That goes so much further than the first example.
Yeah, we tried. I think we hand delivered most. I know we did some, and I can go into details, but you try to be consistent. I don't want one team to get them before the other team. So, but when we can, we try to. And then also, it is COVID, so we don't want to overly expose people. But we agree. Certainly, trying to be present and connect is extremely important.
Awesome. Well, I didn't notice, but we're out of time, and so yeah, thank you for joining us. We have these two questions that we always ask at the end. Is there a book, a TED Talk, YouTube video that you've seen recently that inspired you that you would like to share with our listeners?
Sure. This is a book that I read somewhat early on. I've read it a couple times. And it probably fitting now and for the profession and the circumstances. It's written by Ben Horowitz. He was the CEO of, I think it started as Open Cloud, but then formed a VC company with Mark Andreessen Horowitz. And the title's pretty comical. It's called The Hard Thing About Hard Things. And it is just a grit story of them taking a technology company and totally redefining it and going public during the dot-com bust. So very, very good book. I enjoy it. It's inspired me to really never give up.
Steve, thanks a lot for being with us. This was a lot of fun, and it went by way too quick. But last question is, another innovator in the vet space that you think we should have on the show?
I've got a couple of organizations. I've met the individuals. I don't recall their names, so I'd be happy to give you their names after the podcast. But some firms we use that we've been impressed with recently, Vet Success, on their data capabilities and the way they've been able to aggregate data and use it for, I think, the industry as a whole. On Cura for their ultrasound and remote capabilities with it. And then VetCove, who I'm not sure exactly how to describe them, but my practice managers would say they help make inventory ordering look more like Amazon.
Thank you so much for listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast. If you want to hear about our new episodes, please follow us on any social media channel. Also, you can check out our website at veterinaryinnovationpodcast.com. See you next week.